The gravel crunched beneath the tires as my car rolled through the wrought iron gates of the Knox estate. 5 days until my inauguration. 5 days until I would become the public face of the Hartwell Initiative for Women's Justice. And here I was back in the lion's den. The house loomed, pristine and pale under the Connecticut winter sky. Everything about it remained surgically clean, a curated stillness that smelled of money and fear. Nothing had changed, and yet everything inside me had. My heels clicked against marble as I stepped through the doorway. Marvinia, my mother, was already waiting in the foyer, arms extended with performative warmth. "Aurelia, darling," she said, her lips brushing my cheek like static. "You look so official." "Thanks, Mother." "You look preserved," I replied, my smile sharp. Then came Reginald, my father, standing just behind her, stiff in a charcoal suit, his eyes sweeping over me like a scanner for weaknesses. That gaze, I remembered. It used to make me shrink. Now it only made me measure him back. "It's good you could make time," he said, no warmth, just control. "Wouldn't miss a staged reconciliation for the world," I answered, tone syrupy. The dinner was billed as a family gathering, a pre-inauguration celebration. What it was, in truth, was a showcase. I knew the Knoxes too well to believe in accidents. Flashbacks hit like cold water. Age 8, told to stop crying. Age 15, reprimanded for emotional outbursts. Age 21, shunned after declining a prearranged engagement. Too emotional, too dramatic, too much, or not enough. I adjusted the hem of my blazer and stepped into the dining room with my smile fully armed. The table was long, ostentatiously set. Polished silverware gleamed. Cashin and Lysandra already seated, each holding a glass of something expensive, their laughter exaggerated, practiced. Elowen sat across from me, serene in her silk shawl, the reasonable aunt, always the one to play neutral. Of course she was here. "Big week for you, Aurelia," Cashin said, swirling his wine. "Hope you can handle the pressure this time." A chuckle floated across the table. "You remember the last time she took on public responsibility?" Lysandra chimed. She fainted at the charity gala in '09. Dramatic as ever. I lifted my glass, deadpan. Funny, I never knew concern could wear a smile like that. They laughed. Marvinia dabbed her lips with a linen napkin, eyes darting toward Reginald, who simply sipped. Elowen raised her glass next. To new beginnings and learning from the past, no matter how complex. My hand froze halfway. A thrum began at the base of my skull. Reginald cleared his throat. "There's been curiosity about certain documents. Therapy transcripts. Nothing concrete, of course. Just questions." I inhaled slowly, blinked once. Curiosity is such a polite word for intrusion. Then Dorian. His name dropped like glass shattering. "Shame about that old flame of yours." "What was his name?" "Dorian Vale." Lysandra asked. So much passion, so little stability. I didn't flinch. We all dated disasters in our 20s, Lys. More laughter. The room rang with polite cruelty. But I saw the setup. The real show hadn't started yet. Excusing myself after dessert, I slipped down the east hallway under the pretense of taking a call. The old lounge was around the corner. Fireplace dark, voices inside. I paused at the door. Familiar tones. "She thinks she's untouchable," Cashin was saying. "But we've got the audio. The sessions are damning. You're sure it's usable?" Lysandra. "Everything's about perception," Elowen's voice answered, calm as ever. "She doesn't have to be dangerous, just unstable." "And Dorian?" Cashin again. "He'll talk. We've paid him enough," Elowen said. "He'll sound credible. He always was charming when he lied." There was silence, then a chuckle. "We leak it the morning of the ceremony," Lysandra said. "Let the press swarm. She'll be in free fall before noon." I stepped back. My heart thumped, but not with fear. With clarity. "So that's the game," I whispered to myself. You want a show? I would give them a show. Back in the dining room, the conversation had shifted to vacation properties. I walked in slowly, every inch of me calm, calculated. I'd like to make a toast, I said, lifting my glass again. They turned, smiling, expecting something sweet. To family, I said, pausing, always predictable in their cruelty. A beat. Silence. Then awkward laughter. I smiled wider. Some of us were pearls. Some of us string them into nooses. Marvinia frowned. Cashin's brows furrowed. Elowin tilted her head. I'm tired, I added. Long week ahead. They nodded, glad to be done. I stepped into the night air, the chill slicing against my coat. Once inside my car, I dialed Vincent Creed. It's time to open the old vault, I said, and find every dirty coin they thought they buried. Snow blurred the outside world. I sat in the back seat, phone resting in my lap. It buzzed. A photo. Me and Dorian, taken days ago, clearly staged. Caption, what else is she hiding? My jaw locked, but I didn't delete it. Instead, I forwarded it to Rowan Hale. 2 words, your move. The silence agreement from 2017 hung on my apartment wall, encased in glass like a museum relic. I never signed it, at least not with ink. But my compliance? That had been loud in its own way. I remembered the whisper behind me as I stared at the unsigned page. We all make sacrifices, darling, Marvinia had said, eyes unblinking. My phone buzzed. Rowan. They've moved early, she said. Someone sent Dorian's full interview transcript to 3 major outlets. The story's gaining traction, headline ready. I didn't flinch. How bad? Bad enough that the board's already asking questions. I stared at the contract, a reminder of every lie I let slide. Time was closing in. I walked to my study, sat before the encrypted hard drive built like a cold vault, and entered the passcode I hadn't used in half a decade. The light turned green. My fingers moved fast. Old files, conversation logs, therapy notes I'd redacted now restored. It was no longer about damage control. It was war. Vincent Creed, Isla Marin, and I met beneath the city in a decommissioned tunnel repurposed into a bunker of screens and silence. This is how they operate, Vincent said, spreading out blueprints of the Knox family's trust structure across the table. Shell companies, art donations as tax shields, holding firms offshore, classic laundering patterns. They've spent years hiding money, I replied. Now we find where the trail ends and make it public. Isla's eyes scanned code streams from her laptop. We've confirmed 2 financial subsidiaries are under Cashin's name. If we get into one, we can triangulate the others. Vincent nodded. But there's heat coming. The Hartwell board received an anonymous tip last night. Claims you're emotionally unfit to lead. They want a psychological evaluation. Tell them I'll take it, publicly, with witnesses. You sure? Vincent asked. If they think Unhinged is a brand, I'll sell it back to them in gold. Still, I knew the net was tightening. I texted a 1-word signal to a contact I hadn't used in years. Cipher 5. Seconds later, an encrypted chat blinked alive. We needed a firewall. If they were watching us, they wouldn't expect a ghost. Isla turned pale. They're already inside your system. I froze. How deep? She spun her laptop. Spyware embedded in a routine update. They've seen everything since last Thursday. Right then, my phone dinged again. A headline. Aurelia Knox accused of plagiarism in graduate thesis. Source alleges fabrication. My photo glared from the screen. Lips parted mid-sentence, eyes caught in a blink. The article was everywhere. They want to turn me into a spectacle, I muttered. They want to reduce you, Isla said. That's not the same. The courier arrived at noon. No name, just a brown envelope and a post-it for your eyes only. Tell her someday. Inside, birth records from a private clinic in Phoenix. A tiny foot stamped in blue ink. Date, March 18th, 2011. Mother's name, redacted, but the baby's photo was clipped behind it, a girl. My daughter. There was no signature, only a line in familiar penmanship. She deserves truth. You denied her. My hands didn't shake, but my breath caught somewhere behind my ribs. A flashback. The desert sky bleeding into dusk. I left the hospital with no cradle, no goodbye. Just a promise that she'd never be pulled into this world. Dorian had found her, or at least the idea of her. And now they'd use her like they used everything I loved. I walked to the fireplace and dropped the envelope into the flames. Not because she didn't matter, because she mattered too much to be bait. Later that night, Celine met me on a rooftop bar, surrounded by no one. They think ghosts haunt, she said, but ghosts protect. And sometimes they fight. I have a daughter, I whispered, and they know. She didn't blink. Then we write her a legacy worth carrying. At 2:47 a.m., Cipher 5's signal cut. Mid-transfer. Dead silence. A breach. I asked. Vincent ran diagnostics. Could be a jam. Or they flipped. By morning, our files had been mirrored, copied with timestamps we didn't create. A mole, Isla said flatly. Tension coiled like wire in the war room. Who had access to the archive logs? I asked. Only 6 hands went up, mine included. Isla looked down, then stepped forward. It's me. Vincent lunged, but I stopped him. I didn't intend it, she said. Cashin's firm has dirt on me. A DUI from 2012. I was told if I planted a trace it would disappear. I didn't think they'd use it like this. You underestimated them, I said. So did I. Then fire me, she whispered. No, I said. You walk. Or you stay, and we bleed together. But no more lies. She left, quietly, like someone who'd already written their apology on the way in. Celine stood behind me. People don't break us, she said. They show us where to reinforce. That night, I received an email flagged red from a legal account I knew too well. Subject, reinstatement of 2017 agreement. Attached was a document demanding I re-sign my silence or face breach litigation and full financial forfeiture. I stood at my window watching people cross the DC street below, hurrying invisible, all of them unaware how many wars were being waged in glass towers and glossy headlines. I pulled out my phone and typed. Let's give them something worth silencing. Sent to Vincent. No signature needed. The ballroom pulsed with calculated elegance. Crystal chandeliers glowed above curated floral centerpieces, and a quartet played something vaguely hopeful in the corner. The inauguration ceremony was staged like a coronation, polished, precise, impersonal. I stepped through the main entrance in a black tailored suit. No sparkle, no color, just mourning stitched into form, and rebirth framed by lapels. This wasn't celebration. This was combustion. Lysandra caught my eye first, smirking like she already believed she'd won. Reginald gave a curt nod, the kind reserved for pawns that followed instructions. Marvinia didn't look at me at all. Live stream is ready, Rowan whispered behind me. Celine's connected from the studio. Signal's clean. I took a slow breath. They expect a speech. They'll get their mirror instead. A memory flickered. My first art exhibit, standing beside a canvas layered with broken glass. The title had read, Reflection is a form of violence when truth is too sharp. Now I held the blade. I approached the podium, offering a rehearsed smile to the crowd of donors, officials, journalists, and carefully selected board members. Cameras rolled. Phones rose. The room hushed. Thank you, I began, for joining me at the edge of something new. 3 lines into my welcome, I pressed the remote in my pocket. A motor hummed. 2 projection screens descended from the ceiling behind me. The audience shifted, intrigued. Then the video began. Celine appeared on screen, sitting in her ceramic studio, white clay on her palms, her voice clear and solemn. "It's time we clean house," she said. Gasps scattered across the ballroom. And then the real avalanche began. A cut to Reginald. "We used the offshore shell for one reason, insulation. The family's name couldn't touch scandal. Not again." Cut to cash-in, donor bundling? Of course it's illegal. But if you dress it up as consulting fees, no one checks. Cut to Marvinia. Aurelia's mental health records were necessary. We couldn't risk public unraveling. Optics matter. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I watched their faces blanch under the weight of their own words. Rowan stood by the tech panel, monitoring the live stream. 42,000 viewers and climbing, she murmured. The ballroom broke into chaos. Sponsors whispered. One board member stood and quietly slipped toward the exit. Another checked their phone, likely scanning headlines in real time. Officer Raincalder stood near the far wall, arms crossed, badge discreet beneath her jacket, watching, waiting. She wouldn't need to act. Not yet. Midway through the reel, the screen cut to a softer image. A man and a child on a sun-drenched porch. Dorian. He knelt beside a toddler. Dark curls, wide eyes, and a defiant tilt to her chin. She reached for his hand. He took it. His voiceover filled the room. This child isn't a secret. She's a beginning. The silence that followed was heavier than any confession. Marvinia gripped her chair. Lysandra leaned forward. This wasn't part of the plan, she hissed, not quiet enough. The crowd's confusion turned visceral. Had I hidden a child? Was Dorian the father? Was this a stunt? I stepped forward for the first time. I chose protection over performance, I said evenly. But silence has limits. Flashbulbs exploded across the room. Journalists stood. Questions spilled. But I didn't break. Not then. Because this wasn't about explanations. It was about exposure. I stepped down from the stage as the screen went dark. Rowan met me with a folder. Thick, pristine final. Inside, incorporation papers. The Heartwood Justice Collective. I signed my name with steady hands and handed the folder back. Effective immediately, I was no longer director of the Hartwell Foundation. The name would rot, but the mission would survive. Vincent appeared at my side. The suits are lining up. Civil, criminal, federal. They should have started digging graves, not files, I said. Behind us, board members clustered. One donor collapsed into a chair, red-faced and sweating. Another pulled out a check, tearing it in half. The collapse was seismic and entirely silent. I whispered into my mic, "You started it, Celine." Her voice came back in my ear, soft but proud. "No, my love. You'll rebuild. That's rarer." That night, back in my apartment, I sat barefoot with tea and exhaustion. My inbox glowed with notifications. Praise, condemnation, invitations, threats, a typical revolution. One subject line hovered brighter than the rest. Senate inquiry hearing. You're invited to testify. I stared at it unmoving. My finger hovered over the mouse. And somewhere in my mind, a voice echoed, "They tried to silence you. Now they want your voice." I clicked.